Greetings, and it be time for another whatever you call this type of video. No intro, right into it. From the collapse of the Western Roman Empire outside of Wales, some time before its official collapse date, the common soldier had dramatically less funds available for arming himself. Shields generally followed the late Roman style or earlier Celtic style with a pill-shaped shield, long enough to help protect the legs. Some areas up north used wider circle shields. These would be made of thin wood planks, glued together and further supported by dowels and a hide wrap over the front, almost always brightly dyed. Some had a metal dome in front of where your hand gripped the shield or in front of where your arm was strapped in. Arrows and spears could still get a bit of distance into a shield, so these domes could offer good protection from an arrow point getting into your arm. Spears generally didn't remain in the design of the pilum. It was expensive and tactically wasn't much use for lightly armored men to act as shock infantry. They were usually about the height of a man or a foot longer. Some spearhead sockets had protrusions or even wider wings, which were sometimes seen on beast hunting spears. They did not offer much more utility, however. The wide-winged spears some used could have helped in parrying spear points away. Most men would be carrying a knife or dagger of sorts, as a last-ditch weapon, probably with a wood handle and cheaply hung from a belt with cordage. Secondary weapons, much alike the rest of the kit, was nowhere near standard: axes and clubs, and if you were a posh twat, a nice pretty sword. Speaking of the posh, they could often afford short mail shirts, similar coverage to the early and late Roman sorts. A dense layer would often be worn under the hauberk and over the tunic. This prevented the tunic being gripped by the mail and adding baseline secondary protection. These shirts were as poor as you could get in history, relatively wide rings and no denser than 1 in 4 patterns. Even butted links were used to supplement riveted links in a piece at times. Helmets were essential. There was no particular design as standard, but frequently, conical helms made of segmented strips were used. Metalworking had a great limit on how wide a sheet of metal they could make. These helms often had flaps for the cheeks or tails for the neck. King Radwald in particular, despite having a great lovely helmet only a king could comfortably afford, would be using a design with ocular rings or even a face guard. These designs with more face coverage were most likely. On the high-end soldier, some later confirmed Viking helmets too have these optics to help cover the face better than a nasal guard. These were made of a low-carbon steel in thin strips. The textile lining of these put in a lot of work to prevent the helm caving in when struck by a slingstone or arrowhead. Textile coifs were sometimes worn too. These ones were usually a bit more padded because they faced something just a tad more powerful than headlice. 4 common layers. These men started wearing the increasingly popular medieval thigh-highs and dresses, also known as hose and tunic, hose tied to the drawers and drawers covered by the long top garment. Leg wraps similar to puttees one might recognize from the First Great War, seem to have been used to help protect the legs from the environment and might offer limited armor to a strike or cut. The rich might have themselves socks or hose that extended into the shoe. These would be seen far more commonly later. Common dyes often included onion yellows, poor quality black, red, and green dyes. Sometimes a blue could be achieved, and browns. The rich, by contrast, could get all these in their brightest form and even access pink and kermes red. Undyed garments would have to be treated well to try and keep the light grey shade from becoming stained with grass or mud. Everything metal, potentially even blades to prevent rust too, would be painted where possible, ranging from simple colors to bright dazzling patterns. The lower-end common sodder may not afford this, however, and the rich probably would want to leave it mostly unpainted to show off their snazzy brass fittings. Crossbows, while very effective at arming inexperienced fighters, could be expensive and were still pretty clunky and exhausting to use with spanning methods of the time. They could be a fair bit weaker and stopped my metal armor. War bows had mixed favorability, more often used as skirmishers that fell back when their heavy infantry went forth. Shooting over your own men was risky when both sides got too close, but it seems it may have happened. Okay dokie, I'm a head out now. 3 to you all, and also may you have an above average Pride month and stay safe.